On November 13th, 2018, a little series on Netflix premiered its first season and left a lasting mark on the animation landscape and fandom culture. This series was none other than the DreamWorks series Shira and the Princesses of Power. This show masterfully blends elements of a war story, a space opera, a family drama, and at its heart, a story of queer love that resonates with viewers and fans to this day. An unprecedented reimagining of a classic staple of pop culture that stands tall alongside its contemporaries and cemented its place in LGBTQ+ storytelling history. For those of us not in the know, She-Ra's roots go back to the 1981 toy line He-Man and the Masters of the Universe by Mattel, which spawned an animated series by Filmation that ran from 1983 until 1985. The series starred Prince Adam, aka He-Man, and his many adventures and battles against Skeletor and other forces of evil. While the series and toys were aimed at young boys, Mattel also wanted to reach an audience of young girls as well, and partnered with Filmation once again to develop a new story and characters to tie into the franchise. In 1985, She-Ra made her debut in the animated film He-Man and She-Ra, The Secret of the Sword, where she is introduced as Adora, a soldier of the evil Horde who, upon learning of her own destiny and lineage, takes up a sword of protection and rebels against the Horde, becoming the hero Shira. Later that same year, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe would conclude its series, and She-Ra, Princess of Power hit the airwaves. However, due to She-Ra's rights falling between Filmation, now owned by NBC Universal, and Mattel not gaining the TV rights to the character, the original She-Ra series would be the first and last time that the series would cross over with or acknowledge He-Man and vice versa. After She-Ra's conclusion in 1987, He-Man would receive a live-action movie the same year starring Dolph Lundgren, along with two more animated shows in 1990 and 2002, while She-Ra remained dormant. The property would remain untouched by television and film for nearly 30 years. In 2015, Netflix and DreamWorks Animation sought to produce a reboot of She-Ra and would ultimately tap writer and cartoonist N.D. Stevenson to develop the story, reimagining the characters for new audiences. Stevenson was no stranger to bold storytelling, having written and illustrated comics such as Nimona and Lumberjanes. Nimona, of course, would receive an adaptation from Annapurna and Netflix years later in 2023, even being nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. Nimona's storytelling style in the comics would partially set the stage for what kind of series She-Ra would become. Set on the distant planet of Etheria, She-Ra and the Princess of Power once again focuses on Adora, voiced by Amy Carrero, a Horde soldier who, upon discovering the Sword of Protection and learning about the Horde's sinister goals, rebels against them, turning against best friend turned arch-enemy Catradora, voiced by AJ Michalka, and joins the Princess Rebellion led by Princess Glimmer and her best friend Bo. Meanwhile, Catradora deals with the responsibilities of becoming a Force captain in Adora's place, facing both physical challenges from Shira and the Rebellion, and internal conflict as she deals with her abusive mother figure Shadow Weaver and her boss Hordak. Like most cartoons of the mid to late 2010s, the series initially takes on a lighthearted and semi-serialized approach to its story, introducing new settings along with characters both good and bad, while navigating an escalating conflict between the Rebellion and the Horde that slowly becomes more intense as the story progresses, and characters are forced into roles and positions that ultimately challenge not only their morals, but their relationships with others across a span of 5 seasons, gradually building up to far greater, as Adora is forced to not only grapple with the less than stellar legacy of She-Ra, and the history of the relationship between Etheria and her distant spacefaring ancestors, the first ones, but also her conflicting feelings and relationship with Catradora, as their dynamic becomes more and more strained as the two friends find themselves on opposite sides of an escalating war, with the consequences of both their actions becoming more devastating, all culminating in the arrival of the series' final antagonist, Horde Prime. The show's final arc in 2020 is, at its core, a love story and a tale of redemption for all of the cast as they rise to the occasion while also making peace with the conflicts they experienced over the span of a few years. But the series puts Adora and Catradora's relationship in the forefront, And what was previously teased over the series becomes reality as we got to see sides to the characters we knew existed but didn't know if we'd see as the characters take the leap in the climax, becoming a couple and sharing a kiss that changes everything and saves the world. Reminiscent of a fairy tale of old or a classic Disney movie. At the end of the day, true love between two women not only saves the world from crime, but heals it. When it comes to queer representation, Catra and Adora, affectionately dubbed Catradora by fans, are only the tip of the iceberg in the world of Etheria, as the series includes many queer characters and relationships, to the point where it might be near impossible to find a canonically straight character in series. The amount of LGBTQ plus rep in this reboot is unprecedented even to this day in a series geared primarily towards kids, and it's because of this that many young adults flock to the show and its creator for having effectively made a series that speaks to them and their experiences whilst also presenting a utopia of inclusion in its story. The queer representation also goes beyond the story itself, as showrunner N.D. Stevenson is transgender and non-binary. The series effectively, if not unintentionally, harkens back to the original He-Man series of the 80s, which, while not explicitly queer, many fans of the original series have argued the presence of queer undertones throughout, with He-Man himself becoming something of a gay icon among the LGBTQ+ community back then, and still to this day, despite not being canonically queer. Shira and the Princess of Power brings the subtext of the original stories and makes those implications explicit, creating a gay icon in Shira herself, a character that serves as a reminder of both strength and pride that people in the community can rally around. This icon status has been made clear by the series' dedicated and predominantly LGBTQ+ fanbase, which continues to grow even 4 years after the show's conclusion. New fan art can be found constantly on social media. There's always a number of them cosplaying as the characters at conventions around the world, and they still want more from the series in the form of a 6th season or a movie. These characters and stories open the floodgates for more queer creatives to tell stories authentically with shows like Dead End Paranormal Park and The Owl House, and will only continue seeing more stories like these in the future.